Now that we have our data saved, we will need to access it when we run our application. Notice that we had to transform our OW space object into a property list to save our data. Well, we're going to have to do the opposite to get it out. So let's go ahead and we're going to create another helper method. So we'll do this in our helper methods section of our pragma and we can write OW space object, and we'll write space object for dictionary, and we'll pass in an NS dictionary, and let's add curly braces so we can define our method. Well, let's implement our method. So we're going to say OW space object, and we're going to say space object is equal to OW space object alloc, and we're going to use our custom initializer here, init with data, and we're going to initialize it with our dictionary. Now, for our image, we're just going to hard code this for now. Even though we were able to save our images in NS data, let's just simply grab and hard code our UI image now. So we're going to say UI image, image named, and we're going to do Einstein ring.jpg. So next, let's go ahead and return our space object. And it's really handy that we have this custom initializer, which will be able to convert our NS dictionary into an OW space object. Again, what does this do? It takes our property list, which comes out of our NSUserDefaults, and turns it into a space object. So let's go into view data load and use this method that we just created. So we're going to scroll all the way to the top here. And right after our for loop, let's go ahead and add an additional line of code here. So we're going to say NS array, and we can say the array's name is my planets as property lists is equal to NSUserDefaults, standard user defaults, the class method, to get an NSUserDefault object back. And we can say array for key, and we're going to say added space objects key, or the define we set up earlier. Next, let's use a for loop. So we're going to say for NS dictionary in my planets as property lists, and let's add curly braces so we can add some functionality for this. And we're going to say OW space object is equal to self space object for dictionary, and we're going to pass in our dictionary. And finally, we can say self.added space objects, add object space object. So what's going on in this for loop here? Well, we're using fast enumeration here to iterate through all of the dictionaries in the array my planets as property lists. So if we save two objects, right, we'll have two dictionaries and we'll iterate through this for loop twice. Each time we iterate through, we're going to pull out an OW space object by using the method space object for dictionary and passing in our dictionary that we get from our for loop, right? And this was the helper method we just created. Finally, with this space object, we're going to add the space object to our self.added space objects mutable array so that we can display that information on our table view. So let's go ahead and run our application and see if we're able to persist information now to our application. So once my application loads up here, we're going to be able to add an object. So we can add Pluto. And let's give it a diameter and temperature and number of moons, and we'll say Pluto is the smallest planet. And let's add this. So now we see Pluto appears, but let's also stop our application now and rerun it, and we'll be able to see that Pluto still now appears. So now we've gotten this working properly. Let's go back and refactor our helper methods. We can use the drop down here to find our helper methods, and we're going to go to the space object for dictionary. And instead of hard coding our UI image, let's actually properly grab it from our NS dictionary. So we know that we saved an NS data object to our dictionary for our image. So we can say data for image is equal to dictionary, and we're going to call planet image on it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to convert our data object back to a UI image object. So we can type UI image, and we'll call this space object image is equal to UI image with data, and we'll pass our data object in, data object for image. Right, so we saved an NSData object, we can access that from our dictionary, and now we're going to convert it to UI image, and now we can remove our hard-coded UI image. We're going to say space object for space object image, and now let's go ahead and rerun our application, and we'll be able to see Pluto. So let's click on Pluto, and we'll be able to see our nice image appear from our file that we converted.